Sarah. Thanks for joining me today on Friday the 24th of October for another edition of Friday Sews. So it's been a weirdly productive week. I've actually finished my Canton Moto Jacket. So that's the main thing we're going to be talking about today. I've also just had a little delivery from Godmother, so I thought I'd show you that. So for anyone who doesn't know, the Canton Moto Jacket is one of the mainline patterns for cashmerette, and it's like a sort of biker style jacket. So it has the sort of asymmetric zip, has two lengths. There's like a cropped short length and a longer length one. I chose to make the cropped length. It's got zip little plackety things, zip gusset things on the sleeves. It's got lots of nice features that you would want from like a biker jacket. And I decided to challenge myself on this. I know a few people who have made it have said it's a great pattern, but it's quite advanced. And I had very kindly been sent some fabric to use from Minerva as part of my role as a Minerva brand ambassador. And I thought, why not just challenge myself? And I'm not going to lie to you, it was a challenge. I did not expect to get it done in 1 week. I have been mostly off work this week, so I have been able to just sit down a few days in a row and really get down to it. So before I start and talk you through my experience, I need to thank two people who have been super helpful. The first one is Prayer, so I will put her Instagram link below, who has made this jacket a few times, and I messaged her probably an annoying amount of times with questions. She was super helpful, and she has some really beautiful versions on her Instagram, so go and have a look. But also she directed me towards Tomcat Stitchery, who I already am subscribed to on YouTube, but I didn't realise she had done a 6-part sew along for this jacket, and it would have taken me so much longer without that sew along. It's a really excellent resource. So thank you to Prayer for pointing me towards that. And then thank you, Tomcat Stitchery, for providing such an amazing resource. It just meant that in the parts of the instructions where I was maybe struggling to visualize exactly what I was going to do, because they do little diagrams, but sometimes, you know, it's like your brain just can't get around exactly what's what. It meant that I could just go to the videos and watch her do it, and then I could work it out quite quickly that way. So it just made a real difference in terms of timings, and how long it took me and how I was able to progress. So I would highly recommend having that resource on hand if you are making this jacket yourself. One of the steps I didn't have to do was the pocket. So the cropped view does not have pockets, and the pockets looked quite tricky. So again, if I was making the longer version with the pocket, it would have taken me a little bit longer, as is to be expected. But yes, let's get to it. So I'm going to put a little picture here of my jacket on the mannequin, so you can get the final sort of idea. And then I'm going to show you, I've got the jacket here, and I'm just going to talk you through how I got on with it. So I'm really pleased with how it's turned out. I have omitted one element, which is you're supposed to have little like snaps, gold snaps on the collar, but it's like the last step. And I had them and I sort of held them up, but I just felt like they made it look a bit busier than I wanted it to. So I decided to omit them. I think on a different fabric, I might put them in. I just always think that adding hardware in the late steps is really scary, because you've already done so much work and you could just end up putting a hole in it. So yeah, if I'd loved how that looked on this jacket, I would have done it. But because I didn't love how it looked, I was like, I'm just going to leave it. So I didn't do that, but otherwise I've adhered to the pattern. Now the fabric, I have a little scrap here, is this faux leather. Now there are steps in the pattern where basically most of the main pattern pieces in your main fabric are supposed to be interfaced. I did not interface this because the fabric is already quite sturdy, and it has a sort of backing on it that's a little bit interfacing-esque, and also that helps it move through the machine a bit more. So my machine can be a bit funny with synthetic fabrics, but it was absolutely fine with this, and I think that's partly because it had this like slightly rougher back already. So you might find if your fabric doesn't have as much structure or doesn't have a backing that your machine's going to like, that it's worth doing the interfacing like they said. Also, you can make this jacket in a range of materials. So my fabric is obviously at the sort of heavier end of what you would use. Whereas if you're picking something lighter, or maybe I don't know, like a wool or something a bit less structured, you would need that for the stability. So that's the other change that I made. Now, I had two, I would say, meltdown moments where I just had to step away. They were both to do with the sleeves, but at different points. When I came back and I rewatched the Tomcat Stitchery videos and I just took a breath, I did manage to work them all out. But one was putting in the zips and the sleeve guts, so I'll show you them here. So you've got these, and this opens up. You've got a nice little, that's very neat actually, that finish, isn't it? So I found installing the zip a bit of a pain. I've done a lot of zips in my time, but I've not really fitted one in this geographical location. And I found it really difficult to get a neat finish at the sort of the, what's it called? The stopper end of the zip, so higher up the sleeve. It's not the neatest finish in the world that I've ended up with, but I did okay. I think because it asked you to get a certain length of zip, and I ordered that exact length of zip, but there seemed to be like a lot of zipper tape and not as much zip as there should have been, basically, so I had to just adjust it a bit. But effectively what happened was I messed up how I put it in on the first sleeve, and then in trying to take, because I didn't have a spare zip, I had enough zips for the project, no extras, so in trying to extricate the zip that I had incorrectly installed, I managed to rip holes in some of my main fabric, and luckily I had enough left, so I ended up cutting another sleeve for that side because I destroyed the pieces too much. And luckily, so threw that one away, had a bit of a meltdown, calmed down, rewatched the video, and then I did a sleeve well. So I did a good sleeve, and then I went and recut the sleeve that I destroyed and had another go. I managed to salvage the zip from the first one, and it all worked out fine in the end. The other thing was to do with when you're putting the lining and the main coat together, and again it was the sleeve, so it's the point where you have to sort of put the sleeves face to face, end to end, and then tuck them all through, and it just took me a little while to get my head around it, but again the tutorial video really helped. I watched it a couple of times, and yeah, then I worked it out. So there are definitely points in, I would say this isn't in no way a palette cleanser project. It's challenging, it's good, the finishing is beautiful, and there are great resources out there, but you definitely maybe want like something more chill either side. So let me show you some of the details anyway. So you've already seen the picture. I have not taken pictures in this jacket yet, but I just want to show you some bits and bobs. Now, one of the things is top stitching. I actually love top stitching. I think that's quite neat, isn't it? I don't know why I really enjoy doing top stitching. For this fabric, I really had to rely on the top stitching because it's a faux leather, it's synthetic. There are plastics in there, so you can't really press it. I did use a pressing cloth, but even then it didn't press really well. It was actually very easy to sew with, this fabric. I'll link below. As I said, I was gifted it. It was really easy to work with, surprisingly easy to work with in terms of sewing, but it does not press well. So for this fabric, for this project, luckily there's lots of top stitching. So the top stitching then means you can sort of get the seams to sit sort of flat, because otherwise this would have been quite puffy. I did add in a couple of places where I did a bit of extra top stitching where they hadn't said to, just because I thought it made it look neater and there was no reason not to really. So yeah, so that's, you can see here, it's actually, the fabric's a dark grey, but it looks sort of like a black jacket in this fabric, I think. But it is a dark grey. I decided to use, for the hardware, it's a bronze, I think, a bronze zip. I don't know if you can see very well. So instead of a silver, I think it was either that or like a sort of gunmetal or silver zip, but I quite like the bronze look. I think it looks quite tough. And on the inside, I use this lovely lining fabric. So this is an exclusive Minerva print on one of their, I think it's a synthetic lining fabric. It's little hands, there you go, which I thought was really nice, and again works really well for this, slips on and off like a dream. I've used one of these labels, just a Kylie and the Machines label that says, "You make my dreams come true." They're from my favourite little set of labels. I think it's Mel Stringer is the designer who's collaborated with Kylie and the Machine. They also sell, I had these labels before, but they do have some on Minerva, I think, if you like them. They have like a little curvy lady and little cute designs. They're my favourite labels that I've had ever before. So what else is there to tell you? So you've got this nice little sort of yoke on the inside in the main fabric, which I think is really nice. There is a pleat here in the lining, which I also think is a nice finish. What else is there to tell you about? We've got a little hanging loop. I think it's nice. I just made that from some bias binding. They said twill tape, I think. It also has shoulder pads. So there are shoulder pads in here, which are hand stitched in, which was actually easier than I thought. And they just give it a nice bit of structure. And then we have our sleeve that I've already shown you with the gusset. The sleeves are also lined, so we've got that nice fabric through there. And I mean, overall, I don't think, obviously me holding it up isn't going to show it to the best of its ability, but I'm really chuffed with that. I think one of my proudest makes previously was actually a denim jacket I made, and one of the reasons was because it looked really not homemade. Not that there's anything wrong with stuff looking homemade, but most people would never have imagined I'd made that unless I said to them, I made this. Like, it looked like a real denim jacket. And I know now there's no reason for it not to, because, you know, I think there's a sort of value sometimes put on ready to wear clothes that some people think that's like better than homemade stuff. But mostly ready to wear just means it was made, you know, in a massive factory or a sweatshop somewhere, and they're having to churn out, you know, hundreds of them a day. And they're not great quality fabrics and all of these sorts of things. So I know that ready to wear is not better than homemade, handmade in any sense. But I do find when I make something that's like a bit out of my comfort zone and that looks so legit, it just is really satisfying. And this one was definitely a challenge, but I feel like I've got a really nicely finished, wearable make, and it was worth the effort to make it. So I'll take some proper pictures of that over the weekend probably, and we'll share them in the next vlog just so you can see the proportions. The one thing that's missing is the pockets. I did consider putting in some little pockets in a seam somewhere, but there just wasn't really a way to do it that I thought wouldn't potentially look a bit weird, and it's just a lot of work to put in to then ruin it by putting some random pockets in somewhere. So I'll just have to bring a bag. So yeah, that is what I've done this week. I did just try and make a start on the pyjamas that I was talking about making. My machine's being a bit funny with the cotton jersey randomly. It's maybe time for it to have a service because I've worked it quite hard in the last few weeks and it's not been serviced in a while. So it may be time for me to just actually learn how to use my overlocker, and then I don't have to worry about my machine suddenly going off the boil with stretch fabrics. Who knows? Anyway, I've also had a delivery just this morning. This is from Fabric Godmother. So I actually went on because I saw someone else's really gorgeous make on Instagram. So it was Shelley, who is Shelbury UK on Instagram. She made a post recently in collaboration, I think, with So Confident, where she made this gorgeous skirt out of like a sort of tweedy fabric. And interestingly, I had been eyeing up this fabric on Fabric Godmother for a while after seeing, I believe it may have been early this year or the end of the year before, but I saw, I think it was Holly Willoughby at some point in a little set in this fabric. And I don't think it's being sold as a dead stock fabric, so they must have just used this fabric, but I really liked it and I kept sort of umming and ahhing over whether to buy it. And then I saw Shelley's thing and I was like, oh, I need to just buy it. So I went on and purchased. Now my plan with this is to make, so previously I've shown that I made an Upton pinafore dress using this wool. So I'm going to pop a picture of the old one here. And I'm going to use this fabric to make another one because I feel like I need another one. So this is what the order is for, but I got a couple of other bits as well. So it is this fabric I love. So it's like a houndstooth, but obviously the way the colours are used, it looks like you get these little sort of ombre squares, which I think are kind of nice. And I think this in like a pinafore with just like a black top underneath would be really, really cute and very, very wearable. I like sort of reds and pinks. I've like quite bold reds and pinks. So I feel like this will be really, really nice. And I know I can make it up fairly quickly. So that's sort of what I bought that one for. So that was the initial point of order. So it's Shelley's fault. She persuaded me I needed to buy it. I got a couple of other things while I was there. I got some navy ribbing. So this is because I cut out a sort of colour block version of the CC and Drew, so the Tilly and the Buttons sweater and trackies, to make a cute little coordinated set. And the colour blocking is going to be in like greens and blues. So I just thought navy would be good for the necklines and the cuffs. So I did have enough to cut that out in jersey as well, actually, but I think ribbing is a bit more hard wearing for those areas that are getting sort of stretched all the time. And then I also bought some plain black cotton. So this is, I've already got a little bit, but this is to line so I keep going on about how I'm going to use this fabric to make a little dungaree dress, and this is going to be partly the lining for that and partly the lining for the bag, the oxbow tote that I want to make in my bow puffer fabric. So that's just some black cotton. And then they had some really reasonably priced not ginghams, like tartans. And every year I want to sort of make a nice tartany dress. I think it's nice for autumn, but I also think it's nice for winter. And they had some reasonable prices, so I bought this one. They had some really nice brights, but again, I wanted something that was quite wearable day to day. I'm doing a terrible job of trying to unfold this to show you. Yeah, I just thought it was pretty and it was very reasonable. And I will probably, because I'm boring, I'm so sorry I'm boring, but I will probably make a willow with this because I know I can sew it up quickly. And a lot of my willows, until I made the orange autumn check one the other day, a lot of my willows are a bit more summery. So, and I'm a bore with this pattern, but I just really like the pattern. I can sew it up quickly. And it's a good sort of dress that I can just chuck on for work. But the kids do notice if you wear the same dress over and over. So it doesn't matter, obviously, but I try to have, 5 outfits for the week so that they're not going, Miss, you wore that dress yesterday, or whatever. So if I will happily wear a willow in every colour, then I think this one will do quite nicely. So those are all things I bought from Fabric Godmother. I will link them below in case you like any of them. And that's been it for this week. I have another week off this week coming. I'm a bit more busy socially, so I probably will not be as efficient as I have been with that jacket, but I'm hoping to get a few things done. I have a lot of stretch fabrics cut out, and as I said, the machine is a bit dodgy at the moment, so it might be that I do my overlocker course. So I purchased an online one from Tilly and the Buttons, so it might be that I have a go at that. It might be that I sew a couple of other bits and come back to the stretch things. I'll just have to decide, but no, it's been a more efficient week than I thought, so that's great. I hope you've had a good week too, and that you've been able to sew lots of lovely things up. The weather's definitely been more autumnal, hasn't it? So it's felt more like cozy. I've definitely felt more like I want some cozy things, which is why I've been cutting so many bits and bobs out. I've cut out the Care Bear. I've committed to the soft green for a Care Bear sweater, so I've done an oversized version of the Tilly Billy. So I made an oversized version of it for a big sweater that I made for after our wedding, our mini moon. So I'm using the same sort of pattern for that. And then I've cut out the Drew and CC pairing to use the petrol sweatshirting and some of the soft green, and a couple of other colours that I had tied in there, just so that I've got some options. So I'm looking forward to sewing all of those things up and getting onto some new projects too. That's 2 of my 3 jackety coat patterns done. So the gilet was one, the Moto jacket was the second, and I'm also hoping to make, I don't know if you can see this here, hang on, a hat and fleece, which is another Cashmere Club pattern in this. I think that should be my jacketing needs dealt with for a year, hopefully. But yeah, I'm definitely feeling good because I think my more complex patterns, 2 of the more complicated patterns I had on my autumn plans are now done. So I feel good about that. Anyway, as always, yabbering on. Thank you as well for the anniversary wishes. It was our wedding anniversary on Tuesday, and I gave Nathan his shirt and he really liked it. We haven't got a picture in it yet because the weather hasn't been quite the right thing for it, but we will get some pictures in that. And I know he's going to look great in it. And we had a lovely time. And yeah, that's it for me for one more week. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you're having a great week, and I'll see you next time. Happy sewing. Bye.